Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode. An infinite temptation. And so, Mr.Within would like to speak about the strategies of the infinite in the void. And for those who have been listening for a while, these talks are for the advanced civilization to come. It's as if the seeds of legends have been planted before they sprout. So many things have been envisioned before they actualize. The human being is living in two types of worlds. There's a world in front of our eyes. It has shape, substance, space. And when we look at the world behind our eyes, there is shape, there is space, there is color, but there is not substance. And so what this means is that the human intelligence is making ethereal replications of reality. The brain is throwing worlds into the world. And so man is stumbling through his own creation and nature. There are so many different types of human beings on this planet. There's so many different ways that the human experience is being conducted. And right now I'm like one podcaster live streaming, but imagine in this moment all the people on YouTube live streaming. Now I want you to imagine all the creatures in the world that are conscious. You know what I have realized? The human intelligence, or the intelligence that is within the human experience, that is going through the human experience, it is trying to remember itself as a world. There have been so many different human beings that have looked at how the human is being, and we are left with movement in space. In front of your eyes, objects move in space. Behind your eyes, subjects move in space. And so it's a multi-leveled experience of reality. We may exist in a singular way, but we're multidimensionally experiencing our singular existence, which is another way of saying it's as if the mind of the human being, if we follow a Cartesian dualism, mind-body dualism, I realize that when it comes to knowledge and philosophy, there are different approaches, there are different people. Like different people have different approaches, but I realize that there have been so many human beings living on earth that to want to learn every philosophy, every idea on the planet is some sense impractical. So it's as if man is thrown or appears in a world of information and is wondering what does he do with all the possibilities and variations of information. And we think that free will has been given so that we conduct ourselves in the outer realms. Most people think that their free will is here to move as a physical entity. But perhaps your free will is here, your free will is choosing the space where reality occurs in. I don't know how to say it. Before I communicate, before I do anything actually, I'm kind of like being the moment, being the presence of the moment. And it's either an inner intention or an outer movement. You don't know how many days I have sat still and I've wondered, okay, I'm a body, I'm a mind. It's like It's like everybody sees their body. Now we're trying to comprehend the mind. The ancients considered the soul. And so the more we go far back in history, the more we see that mankind, think about what's going on this planet. It's a rock in the middle of nowhere. The creatures awakened on it. They realized they were creatures. Then they realized they were in a place more bigger than their brains could fathom. So in some sense, in a meaningless, massive, unknown world, our species had to make a decision. Are we going to just stare at the unknown, or are we going to tell ourselves a story? And so our species decided to tell itself a story, and that was the time in history where silence was converted. You see, I have wondered about why karma happens in different ways, and why does it happen to people in different ways? Why does it appear? I feel since my childhood I've been and so you saw the consequence of their mistake, let's say 14 moves ahead of them. But they hadn't. What I'm trying to say, for example, is that the mind of man is here to work with vision. It takes the vision in front of our eyes and wields it in such a way that we feel we are processing reality, right? Rather than feeling as if we are happening as part of a network of interrelated causes and effects, we isolate, we individualize. The person's like, yo, so what, the world was caused and everybody's going through cause and effect. What about my cause? What about my effect? Like, that's how people are living nowadays. But I don't know, there's this feeling in me that there are certain thresholds in evolution, and our species is passing another one. And what it means is that there are transformations based on intelligent activity. So think of it this way: if there is someone, imagine you had an option of using an advanced technology, or you had the option of doing nothing, right? And most people would choose the advanced technology, even though the advanced technology is in a lesser dimension. Because the idea is, this is the bizarre thing that I was looking at these. He was a Zen master or a butterfly. There was this king, he had a dream he was a beggar. And then he woke up in his palace like, what the fuck? Like, what am I? It's like, which one am I? What is my destiny? And so this is the strange thing, that everybody knows that life is an event. Everybody knows life is dynamic, and everybody knows that engagement with the world is kind of like bits of you. It's like an exchange. Believe it or not, every time I give these talks, it's an exchange. It's as if energy that could have gone to somewhere else is coming here. And especially if you're someone who entertains the concept of other lives, right? There's some people who see past lives. For me, I see a future life. To me, if you ask somebody in the New Age community, how do you perceive theosophy or the interdimensional, they'll be like, yo man, let me ask my angels, let me ask the extraterrestrials and the celestials guiding me. Let me channel the ascended masters. You see, it's as if we do not have enough understanding to realize that they are not shaped. That man's next phase in evolution is to transcend himself. That's where we're going. Pretty much 3 things can be transcended in this world: yourself, others, and the world. These 3 things can be transcended. But when you transcend others, usually you realize a new self. When you transcend yourself, you also realize, something new about others. But when you reach a point where you're like, wait a minute, I've been playing in this psychological, subjective storytelling theater where I am this character in a story that I chose, but I chose in the void. What am I? And so really the main focus for the event, for the episode tonight, was that I was thinking, like, what have I not talked about deeply in these lectures? And I was like, I haven't talked to confronts his fears and grows beyond them. Do you know what that means? That means it's like poetically written in the stars that our species the ability of the free will, you know. Right now, most people, they can move their bodies. You know, if you like, let's take an analysis to free will before I think about, you know, free will in the context of an infinite being. In this moment, right now, I'm wondering about all the ways that my free will can move. Right? I'm in the conscious waking state on Earth. And so I can physically move my body. I can move my voice box to generate sound, but I can also close my eyes and remain silent and watch how my mind moves in front of me. So if I was to say free will depends on the concept and the context, right? You know, like if you look at it from just a materialistic perspective, it's like, what free will? It's like we're inside a universe, we're inside a system. The context is moving us regardless of how we want to move. Do you know, my free will may want the earth to spin the other way, but will it? But when you think of it in regards to the domain of the mind, that's really where our free will is. You know, human beings, sometimes in the outer realms, they have a free will to change certain things in the world. But most oftentimes we find ourselves in situations where we can't change the world, and we're like, what do we do? Do we wait for a savior to come and change the world for us? Or do we change ourselves? This was the biggest mystical secret I realized. That once my experience of myself changed, the context would not be the same. You know, when I'll give you an example. When I was younger, I would look at people and I would think what I saw was that. Like what a person said was them. I thought their personality was them. Until I realized from myself that I'm like, wait a minute, nobody can see how I am seeing the world unless I speak, at least. But the reality is that there is a dimension within all of us that in some sense cannot be seen. Do you know what I'm saying? Like it's like I can use words, I can dance, even try to express my inner realms through dance, but in reality it is not a physical event only. And so, dear viewers, you know, I notice that so many people, they act spiritual, they say they're spiritual, they say they're religious, but what dimensions to the world are you seeing? Are you politely putting a linguistic box over your head and feeling, you know, spiritual AF, or what is it? Because for me, the concept of the soul was so intense that it suggested that there is a moment in this being that is not conditional. The nature of mind is all about conditional, unconditional. Mysticism is an unconditional truth. The yogis wanted to free themselves from the worldwide because samsara was a conditional, it's like a reality that gives you conditions. Do you know? It's as if we've come to the place where the traps are made, not where the traps are. Do you know? And what this means is that if you were to see that idea, it's like you can see the idea of God as if it's something that can't be comprehended by man's mind. Do you know? But for me, I'm just saying right now, imagine like the top of the hierarchy, right? So the bottom of the hierarchy, it's like finite, you know, poor beings, and probably in the future, in the top of the hierarchy, it's going to be like, you know, rich immortal beings. Like, you know, the wealthy are probably going to, you know, invest in immortality, you know. You think billionaires are not going to invest in immortality? You think people who have dedicated their lives to outer realm value are not going to decide to continue? Do you know what kind of a being you have to be able to, in some sense, This is a very bizarre thing I'm going to tell you, but it's something the ancient Sufis would say, to die before you die, which meant the idea of you has to notice before your body is gone that it is not completely the moment. And the moment there is that doubt that there is something unknown going on behind the scenes, you will feel something you have never felt before. It's like the presence enters the room. You know, in certain states, I graduated from film school, and there was this I don't know, Russian or Ukrainian kid, and this Russian and Ukrainian kid, he liked mushrooms on his pizza, and so there was this, I went with the flow, and I found myself in this botanical garden in downtown Toronto with a couple acquaintances. And if I was to tell you my experience, there came a moment where I was alone and I felt a presence enter my awareness. I don't know how to tell you. Imagine a giant appears in front of you, or imagine like you are a soldier enlisted in the army and like an admiral or a general comes into the room. Do you know what I'm saying? It's like there's a huge to me, the divine is not just emotions, it is the responsibility of presence. That means this is pretty much how it works. Those who can see more, usually life makes them responsible for more. There's so many different types of experiences. Literally every human being is like a system, and these systems are being implemented, and you in this lifetime get to see what kind of system you are. 8 billion creatures on a rock in the middle of nowhere. And we're expected to just, forget about every other being on this planet and to just think about ourselves and go to sleep happily. It's like, what kind of human beings are we if we cannot take care of our own species? What kind of beings are we if we cannot take care of our universal sector? What kind of beings are we if eons pass by and we do not question what advancement is? The true advancement. Because there may come a non-physical humanity in the future. There may come a time in the future, whether through technological means or other means, there may come a time where the experience of the human being is faster and way faster than the human body. And if your experience of your mind goes faster than your body, one body is not enough. So most likely it's like a cup that gets to full to the brim. Sometimes in these Mr. Within talks, I've got into certain rhythms of speech where in those rhythms of speech, I have literally become the moment. So imagine just like a poet saying words, imagine a poet that's saying poetry, but midway through its poetry, he feels he's become the poem. He feels that the words are representations of the nature. So now to this idea of what would be the strategy of an infinite being on Earth. What would an infinite being do? I'm right now a finite being, a temporary being, a mortal being, physically. So to me, it's like the meaning is survival. Because there's something to lose, there is the ideal of preservation, which is survival. But if I was an infinite being, if I was an eternal being, that's a suggestion. I mean, infinite and eternal, a bit different. Eternal would be a suggestion to the mind, infinite would be a suggestion to the body. But let's say if there was an infinite being, an immortal being would have nothing to lose. So imagine actually we were all born in a world where we couldn't die, right? And everybody was like, whoa, are we just born and we don't die? Like, does that make sense? And imagine there comes a time where people are like, yo, something feels off. You know, everything in nature changes, but why are human beings being immortal? So imagine somehow humanity develops immortality technology, human beings become immortal, but they all forget how they became immortal, right? And so an immortal being's like, yo, whatever I do, my energetic presence is still being this moment. So perhaps the true realization is that one is never an individual being, that you're actually being, your oversoul is being a universal sector. Okay, these are new age terms. So what it means is that your thoughts are coming not from here. It's kind of weird. I don't know how to say it, but it's like human beings have access to intelligent beings with form, but we don't know how to perceive an invisible intelligence. And what I'm saying is that an infinite being, like a being that doesn't die, is going to be like, yo, what is the value? So pretty much, you know, human beings are trying to be immortal. They're trying to continue, but it's actually strange. Because we will miss out. We will feel, it's like immortality is like the confirmation of the unnatural, you know? What it is mankind did not feel what it was enough. That's it. And so perhaps this explains the infinite temptation that a finite being wants to see what the other side of the coin is. But I think it's very obvious. Anything that has shape is conditional. It changes. Anything that doesn't have shape, how can it change? It's as if space is infinite and the matter in the space has a finite performance value. So what that means is, like, imagine a being that was space communicated with a being that was matter, and the dance of these two beings is like reality, you know? Because human experience is not just influenced by objective phenomena. This is the biggest proof that it's not physical. Alright guys, I need a quick intermission. I'll be back. You know, it's so strange. Life would have made more sense if we knew what we were. If human beings knew what they actually were, they wouldn't have to spend, their lifetimes figuring it out. That means imagine how many beings they enter this world looking for truth. But imagine we had entered a true world and it was a post-truth experience, not a pre-truth experience. All right, let's bring the notepad. All right. All right. So we have an infinite temptation. To be honest, I wrote this as the subtitle, but I thought it was more interesting as the title. And then we want to think of strategies of the infinite in the void. So the question comes, a strategy suggests a plan for an outcome. Okay, so the context is the void. So and then the concept, I would say, is infinity, the infinite. So pretty much we want to know, what does infinity have to do in the void? And you know what it is? I feel that perhaps, I'm saying perhaps, human consciousness reaches a point of contentment at the moment it realizes it is not bound to just being a drop, that it can actually experience itself part of a stream, part of a river, and then a waterfall, and then the ocean. You see, our attention, our eyes invite the worlds that become a part of us. So to think of the strategies, I don't know. I would say what can be done pretty much in the void. So I would say, in accordance to my own system, I call it Ring of the Absent Heaven. So pretty much an infinite being can, let's say, become void somehow. That's one strategy in the void. An infinite being can, let's say, become singular. It can choose to endure as a singular entity. An infinite being, as a strategy, can become dual. And what that means is, like, the infinity, rather than being considered through the experience of space, is being considered through the experience of matter. So what does it mean? It's kind of like saying there is an infinity beyond duality. That means an infinity that is different than duality. I don't know how to say it. Or part of its strategy can be an infinite being. An infinite being can stay infinite. So I would say there are four strategies of the infinite in the void. So we could choose to consider ourselves as like these infinite beings, and our dualistic human incarnation is like, infinity chose to experience the void dualistically, or the infinite chose to experience the void in a singular way, or the infinite chose the void to be the experiencer. And usually when that happens, it's kind of like, I don't know how to say it, but if a being steps out of non-existence, so imagine you, like, this is going to sound bizarre, but like, imagine you die non-existentially. Because, I mean, like, I don't know. I mean, can you imagine, like, an immortal being like, yo, I didn't realize, like, immortality would get boring. Like, that would be such a buzzkill. Because it's pattern recognition. I remember I heard, what's his name? Charles Bukowski. This was his last Earthbound interview. And the person asked him, like, how do you see death and stuff? And he said he's not afraid because he's noticing many things in life repeat themselves. What does that mean? That means he's noticing that karma is cyclical, but not to just him. And so I guess the world is strangely preparing us for where we're going, I think about it. I mean, pretty much we can move physically, we could move non-physically, and we can watch. So it's either physical movement, non-physical movement, or stillness. So I don't know. I'm pretty much saying an infinite temptation, the temptation to endlessly continue. I don't even know if that's natural. Like, it could be that we are like this unnatural force and it's not used to nature. Because if a creature is part of the world, why would it fear the world, So what is unnatural is consciousness. Consciousness maybe not from Earth, Consciousness, like our awareness, maybe like you control a remote controlled drone. maybe from a timeless place. I don't know, time is being managed. Because it's very fathomable. I mean, just like you see creatures on land and you see creatures underneath the water, nature designs creatures for environments. Now we look at outer space and we're like, there's no creatures there. You know, but what if there are? We just can't see them. Anyways, dear viewers, I'm going to end this episode. Thank you for listening. And you know, I'm going to say this to the viewers. My metaphysical experiences, it's like once you realize the metaphysical is suggesting to that which is not here, or which is not in the experience of here, I don't know how to say it, but I think the beauty of a soul is in its faith of being. Because it doesn't make sense for something to be created. Like imagine an inventor invents an android. And the android is like, you know, has issues, like do you know, it's as if like an inventor creates an android and then tells his laboratory buddy, like an apprentice, like, I'm gonna put you alone with this android in a room and you have to deceive this android from its original programming to test the android. And so the creator of the inventor of the android is, let's say, behind like one of those mirror windows, and the android is in a room, and then the apprentice goes in the room with the android and constantly tries to deceive the android. And imagine this android suddenly gets a message from the inventor, don't listen to the deception, do you know, and have faith in yourself. And the android's like, I have faith in my creator, do you know. And so it doesn't listen to, let's say, the apprentice, you know, that wanted to, like the angel of the inventor that wanted to deceive the invention, you know. The species is opening up to ideas, many ideas that it could see the beginning of, like strings, but when you pull the string, the idea, you can say the rest of the idea's explanation is not even like fathomable. You know, it's kind of like being like, how do we, in a dualistic system, explain the system non-dualistically, you know? And so action through inaction, as Lao Tzu said. You know, it's kind of like if you're in the wrong room, imagine like, you know, everybody's in the living room and you go into like, I don't know, you go into like a bedroom, right? And you're like, where is everybody? Right? And you're in the bedroom and you're like, yo man, they must be under the bed, they must be somewhere, you know, in this room. And you look in the room and you see no signs of the host. So imagine, this is a cool example, imagine like, I'm trying to see this as sort of parallels to the concept, to the God idea in monotheism. So imagine that there is a host that hosts this house party, this next level party, okay? And so imagine guests have arrived out of nowhere to this party, and some of the guests, you know, imagine one guest got lost in the room, you know, and went to the wrong room, and the guest is like, yo, where are all the other guests, you know? And imagine the host figures out the guest has gone in the wrong room and comes to the guest and says, yo, this is not, you shouldn't be here, you know? It's like, go back downstairs, you know? The presence of the intelligence that is being all these creatures here, because it's a creative intelligence, it cannot fear, it cannot on some deep level because we have tasted existence. Anyways, thank you for listening. Share, subscribe, comment, like, and join. In the comment section, try to answer the question, what do you think an infinite temptation is? Or what would the strategies of an infinite being in the void be? And thanks for listening. Rise, mankind, rise.